Quite a while ago when we were in the pandemic, it was me, my wife, and my son. It was a Sunday, and we were trying to find an excuse to get out of the house because we had cabin fever. We had been doing errands, getting ready for the week, and so we headed into a town not far away from us, Princeton, New Jersey. And we go into the town and we say, all right, let's go to the local bookstore, look around for books. Maybe we can support it by buying a few of these books. We go in and I'm looking around, and in one of the main featured tables, I notice a cover that has what looks like black and white stones on it. And so it piques my interest and I look, and sure enough, it is a book about Go. I'm shocked. I still to this day haven't seen any books about Go in any way presented in a prominent way at a bookstore. So really cool. It was called A Short Treatise Inviting the Reader to Discover the Subtle Art of Go. It was a translated book from French, and I can certainly put the link in the episode notes. But I did buy the book, was really excited to read it, and unfortunately, a lot of it fell flat for me. The translation got a bit abstract at times. I still think it's worth a read. You never know, you might like it. But on page 130, the author has a section called Introduction to Strategy, and there's almost like a poem in there. And it's certainly better read than spoken aloud, but because this is a podcast, I'm going to read it to you. It goes like this. If you know how to judge the overall situation at a given moment of the match, if you know how to form a somewhat precise idea of where you could make your next move, if you have somewhat clear idea regarding what your opponent is cooking up, if you know your opponent's weak points, if you never forget that your opponent has a very good chance of knowing them as well, if you know what they know, if you know that they know that you know, if you know that they know that you know that they know, if you know where and when to engage in combat, if you know when to stop combat in order to engage in one elsewhere, if you know how to keep threats in reserve, if you take care at every moment to keep your eyes on the corners, on the edges, on the center, if you know how to look everywhere, if you know how to stop at the right moment, get up and consider the game in its entirety with a new eye from above, from afar, from the other side, if you know how to use your imagination, if you don't screw up, if you never panic, if your hand doesn't tremble, you will be a Go player, my child. I read this a few times and I really liked it. There's a lot to like about it, the ways that it describes the game, the different aspects. I certainly don't agree with every single part of it, but it really struck me. I love how it tried to encapsulate all the different aspects of the game that are so fascinating. So, all right, let's get started. This is All Things Go. Now we're going to listen to the second half of my interview with Devin Fraze, where he discusses success stories of increasing the popularity of Go in other countries, his role in the American Go Association, and some other upcoming projects he has. Please keep in mind that each interviewee's views, thoughts, and opinions expressed here are their own. Take a listen. And maybe that's a good spot to just connect back to what you were talking about before around how to spread the word about Go in the West. And one big way that you connected to it, definitely how I connect to it and so many others, is the role of traditional media as well. AlphaGo, that was how I really connected to the game. And then later, once I was into it, I was like, man, I really want to find something else that I can at least access in English or English subtitles or dubbed. That's when Hikaru no Go came into play. And it was nice to have something that really crystallized these other aspects that I was never aware of, right? Because in Hikaru no Go, you see this whole culture. It really opens your eyes to that. And I think it's just really fun. What do you think is needed to create the next wave of interest? Do you think it's another piece of media? Is it another show or movie or something in English? Do you think it's just continuing with that grassroots organizing? Do you have any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, being a full-time kind of organizer, I think about it a lot. Well, the main approach, I think, is to be data-driven. And so I've looked around and said, what are the effects of, these kind of waves or tsunamis of Go players, if you will. Hikaru no Go being a huge one in the 90s when that first came out and has since, still sent many Go players kind of into the game. and then AlphaGo being a big driver of the wave, but AlphaGo being recently enough that we can kind of check and measure some of the effects. So you can in the OGS forums actually see stats compiled by people that are scraping the database with permission, but about like, hey, here's how many new people joined at that moment, and then here's what happened following that moment. Or you can look at the AGA membership levels and say, hey, here's how many we had, and here's how many happened afterward. And the disappointing effect, essentially, in both cases, is that there was, obviously a huge spike in that moment of AlphaGo, but following afterward, it did not maintain a increased number of players, or a very slight increased number of players. And at least in regards to the AGA, because I serve on the board and I've looked at the data more closely there, it really has to do with the idea of churn, which is a term used in businesses to describe when a customer leaves your business. So one of the core ideas in a business is that customer acquisition is very expensive. And so losing customers after kind of gaining them is bad. And so, if you have two options to either try and increase the number of new customers for a business or decrease the amount of people leaving your business, you always want to choose trying to reduce that churn. And essentially, the AGA numbers were we gain 500 people a year and we lose 500 people a year. And that's insane. It's absolutely insane. Now, I think there are a lot more Go players out there than the AGA, which is always kind of unfortunate, and that we don't understand or have data on, who's playing Go in the US, unless they give us some money. Kind of part of what I wanted to do with Baduk Club is give clubs the ability to understand, who their community is and stay contacted with their players. But then also in a broader sense, understand like how many Go players do we have in North America, South America, Europe, and stuff like that. And the next step is to try and reduce churn. So I think, creating a wave is very difficult. It's not very easy to build a tsunami, if you will, of new interests. Not that there aren't some amazing media creators out there that do a lot for the community. There's a lot of great YouTubers and Twitch streamers and bloggers and podcasters and stuff like that are not very many podcasters. Hopefully more, will come out. But in Go, and those I think enrich the community and are important, but probably won't lead to a wave. And then you have a small wave, such as like Go is finding its way into popular media more, appearing on different animes and Crunchyroll. I've noticed recently appearing in a couple of different Netflix series.
That's right.
As minor kind of
like right.
Mm-hmm. And I think that does raise the broader awareness, which is nice. But I don't think we'll know when the next tsunami will come, and I don't think we know how to create it. But I also don't think it's a problem. I think the question then, how do we reduce churn in our community? So when someone shows up to the Go Club, how do we actually keep them engaged and help them really connect with other people there and want to keep coming back? And I think if we do that, that's how exponential graphs work. It will become the wave itself if we can actually solve that problem. So that's kind of my main focus with Baduk Club right now. And I'm actually rebuilding the website from the ground up to really make it more effective. And I'm going to come out with kind of some more videos and helping related media for organizers to support them in that mission of keeping their players really happy and active and enriching what's happening. And I think, in the same way that rain can slowly reduce a mountain to a hill, as organizers, we can slowly make a dent and cause the community to become the tsunami.
I appreciate those thoughts, Devin, and also just the work and building from the ground up. Whether it's a website such as Baduk Club and those sorts of things. It sounds like it's this constant iterative process. It sounds like, right, trying to find different ways that change that data to some degree, or shows some inkling that it could have an effect. And just to go back to a really great point that you made in your interview, actually, with the European Go Journal, you were talking about some of the things that the Russian Go Federation did to increase popularity. Tell us about that.
Right. I'll tell you about that. I'll tell you about another one as well. But one of the things, oftentimes the Chinese Weiqi Association, or the Korean, Baduk Association, or even the Japanese Nihon Kiin, they've sent money to the US and they've pumped it into different organizations. And I actually remember being at the European Go. I'm sorry, I wasn't at the European Go Congress. I was at a French tournament, but the president was there and he was kind of like petitioning the Chinese connection who was there to give them some more money. But I've noticed essentially in all these cases, the money just goes directly into like prizes for a tournament or something. And then it goes to a player and it's gone. And that's that. That's the end of it. But the Federation would manage to find a sponsor. It was like a metalworking company, I believe. and they got a good chunk of money, and they put that into hiring some staff. And then they said, how, do we build an organization that, immediately kind of like focuses on all this creating really nice, media and supporting clubs and organizers and tracking the data and all this stuff like that. And they've done a good job. And they've also changed their outreach as well. So the outreach perspective essentially is a lot of people in the U.S. all the time say we have to reach out to youth. Got to get the kids hooked. And it's true. I mean, we definitely want, youth involved and kids involved, and those people become adults and those people play Go for the rest of their lives. But the strategy is good, but the tactic is important. And the Russian Federation has a very unique tactic. So the typical tactic in the U.S. is figure out how to get into schools, go to a classroom, and then, lecture kids for a while, or hopefully even get them playing, which is great, and do that as much as you can. And we've seen noble efforts in that regards. And I think maybe there are some people that have started playing Go because of that. But I remember actually talking to a local organizer who he had a friend who was teaching in the schools, and he's like, none of these kids ever come and play in the tournaments. Like there's not a continuation. So the question is why? And time is the answer. Time is valuable. And families and kids don't just do anything for no reason. You might be able to get in a classroom and the teacher's happy to have you there, but afterward the kid's like, cool, like this is going to help me have a good life. Think about what's the customer want, right? It's kind of customer obsessed perspective. And, kids and their families especially really want their kids to be living successful lives. They want to go to a good college, and they're gonna pay for a tutor, and they're gonna take them to these extra classes, and they're gonna drive them to all the activities, and that's how they're deciding what to do with their time. So the Russian Federation says, we're going to reach out to a bunch of successful businessmen and entrepreneurs, and we're going to convince them to learn Go. We're going to say, hey, this is going to really help you connect and network, and it does. And we're going to help you, it's going to help you be more strategic thinker and, build and grow your business, and it does. And then they can take that to other people, both adults and to kids and families, and say, look, we here in the Russian Federation work with and are connected to all these super successful businessmen and women. Don't you want to be like that? And if you do, you should learn Go. That's the way. And boom, absolute explosion. They've done a great job at growing because of that. And I think it's just that tactic idea, the mental switch of, instead of like, how can I get in front of a class and hopefully they'll just fall in passionate love with Go, which again happens. But even if you love something, you may not be able to make time for it because it's not part of your priorities. So how do you make something that's beautiful and wonderful like Go? How do you help people integrate that into the priorities of their life, both from a parental perspective or from a business perspective? You're not a retired guy. A lot of old retired guys in Go, which is great. But you're a working professional, and you want to put your time into something that's useful. And so they've approached like that. I think it's really worthwhile. The second organization I'll mention real quick that's kind of done a similar thing is is it Kyrgyzstan? I can't quite remember exactly. I think it's Kyrgyzstan. And there's a gentleman there who's kind of going to work with Go Magic, and that's maybe the best way to connect with them right now, who is an entrepreneur, and he grew the community in Kyrgyzstan from like 0 to over 600 paying and dedicated members in like 1 year. Which is insane. I mean, that kind of growth is absolutely unreal. But he was an entrepreneur, and he just kind of approached it from a similar perspective of engaging with kind of a very kind of high functioning successful people, and then those people loved Go, and they when they were like doing more and more things with it, it's kind of like everyone wanted to be around those people, and it became a great networking thing as well. So it's really a community again, but it's a community kind of like along with the purpose of why are we seeking others? There's connection, which is great, but sometimes in a way, like you're just sitting there silently across a Go board, you're not necessarily just kind of getting that warm, fuzzy feeling you do in a book club or something. So what else are you getting out of it? So thinking about that and kind of being quote unquote customer obsessed, with your players is, I think, a really good strategy. And there's probably more ways to do that than what I've just shared, but with a framework, you could take that anywhere. So.
Hey, I mean, it's something that's been demonstrated to appear to work in other places. So creating that sort of ecosystem, right, and that sort of connection to networking, to businesses, it makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like there's some very real promise if the stars align, so to speak, or the certain resources. So that's a really interesting idea. Let's transition a little bit to your role as an American Go Association board member,
Right.
which you've now been in that position for, I believe, over 5 years, correct?
Yep. That's
Okay,
right.
so great. You said in some of the work that you do that you really are focusing on two key areas. So you said one was better communication between the association and the community, and then the second one was removing roadblocks to hierarchy. So just kind of curious, like how is that going? How do you feel like your progress is in that area, or just at large in the community?
Yeah. So I ran for president last year, or maybe a year and a half ago, on that platform because I thought those were the fundamental things I needed to change in the organization. And I've been a little bit disappointed in my role as a board member because essentially I've discovered that board members are really unable to affect the day to day and the critical, what I view as the critical aspects of the AGA. We're able to pass policy and we're able to nudge the president in a good direction, but I haven't been able to actually do either of the things I platformed on
Yeah.
as a board member. It's really not possible. It has to come from the president, which is why I ran for that. And, got all political and messy and stuff like that. And I think essentially at the end of the day, much like many elections, people prefer to vote for the old safe guy than the young rebel rouser. Even the people voting, it was actually the board members, and they were kind of fellow young people on there, but they were just talked down by more kind of older folk. And then I was kind of like, outvoted in a secret meeting from a person that didn't say they were running, but then had a secret sponsor whose name wasn't mentioned. All this is, kind of come out, and I've dug into it and figured out what happened. But it's just kind of like, why? Like, why are we playing these kind of secret political games? Just go. Everything should be transparent on the board. You can see. Now, maybe you don't act appropriately because your opponent tanukis your stone and you just play away, but it's there in front of you. And I think there's the beauty in that to go. There's no hidden moves, but there may still be hidden motives. And that's certainly happening a little too much in the AGA. Yeah, I stay in the board now to I've been voted in time and time again, and I'll keep serving maybe as long as people want me to, or until I find it unable to do positive things in our board meetings. But yeah, a little disheartened there, and so hopefully Gurjeet, who's the current president, continues to do a good job. I mean, there's some critiques I have. He's done a lot more than Andy Oken in regards to updating things. Not that Andy was a great president in many ways. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. Definitely Gurjeet isn't just doing nothing. So I appreciate his action there as well. I hope leadership can update the org a little bit. And at the end of the day too, the reduction of hierarchy, my main goal there is simply that right now everything kind of happens top down. So that's why I say, okay, hopefully Gurjeet does something, because essentially no one else can act unless it's either from a directive of Gurjeet or Gurjeet approves. And making anyone the primary bottleneck in some sort of area just naturally slows things down. And irregardless of if there's good decisions or bad decisions, it's just not going to allow as much development to happen as I think the Go community could use.
One thing that has resonated for me as somebody that is a relative newcomer to the game is your presence online and seeing, whether it was 2 years ago when it was discovered, oh my goodness, there hasn't been much of any communication of the Go qualifier, and your team, like, you jumped into action and you guys made it happen. And then even this past year with the qualifier in San Francisco. And when you think about Go, what's something that you've rethought in your life after you've played Go?
I think I've grown a little more patient from Go. It's helped me, kind of understand there's Joseki to things, and things take their time, and or I might have just gotten older a little bit, 33 now, but who knows? Like, you get more patient as you get older. But I think Go has taught me some patience as well.
Interesting. What's the focus at this stage for you, right? We know that increasing the popularity through organization of communities and things, you talked a little bit about potentially having a professional come and maybe there's some opportunity if there's enough interest. Is there anything else that you wanted to add on things you're focusing on?
Yeah, 2024 has actually been the year of refocus for me. So the part of why the Baduk house, for example, has the pro might happen is because that's not necessarily a deep area of what I'm trying to put in front of me now. I've realized with Baduk Club, I've done a lot of different things. I've opened a store. I've added different connections to different like variant Go server, helpful stuff on the site, or I've added, I've tried to work with different organizations directly. I'm also building, a website called Baduk News where I cover, Baduk News, which is a platform for others to write news. And it kind of helps make it a easy, beautiful way for people to read Go related news and, a lot of cool stuff. So I've been building all sorts of interesting things, but I haven't really touched on the heart of everything, which is the community aspect and the Go Club aspect, which is what I started with. And so it's I think over the next 6 months here, start of 2024, I really want to focus on how do I really enhance and enrich the Go clubs and what things they have available to them. So I'm working on a redesign of the site that I think should be much more helpful and enjoyable for clubs, as well as various kind of posters that clubs can use to post around, or bookmarks that people can slip into books to help Go players find their club, or anything relating to that. So that's kind of my focus. I'm kind of refocusing on that. In Go, there's two kind of competing ideas. And this is why Go can be so nuanced of life, is you want to make sure that you're not over-concentrated. You can't just keep playing the same corner over and over. So you got to sprinkle your stones around the board, and corners at center, all that good stuff is how you figure out kind of where to go.
Right.
But you also don't want to get too thin. You don't want to get in the middle of a fight and you have, 5 weak groups on the board and you can't save them all, and then you're in big trouble. And then that's kind of, I think, what happened with Baduk Club is I've been doing a lot of cool stuff, and I've kind of no regrets. It's been neat connecting with people in different ways. And, I think I mentioned on Discord, some Discord server recently, I'm in actually over 60 Discord groups. It's like, there's too many.
Wow. Are you serious? Oh my God.
Exactly. So I'm like, all right, I need to focus on a few key goals, a few key aspects, and, really make the key impact in those areas. And then once those are a little more solid, the group's going to live, it has 2 eyes, then go off to the couple other things to build. So that's my plan.
Devin, I appreciate all the allusions, the very appropriate allusions to the game of Go as you're talking about, your current challenges, your current focuses, and where you are in the future. So thank you so much for taking the time. This has been a really enjoyable session, and thanks so much.
Well, appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Now we're going to talk about some more key learning insights that I have experienced so far on my journey. I'm going to break it up into 2 groups. The first one's going to be around psychological learning points that I've had, and then the other one's going to be more conceptual in nature. So let's start with the psychological. This isn't in any particular order. It's just the things that I've found that I've gotten the most benefit from my Go teachers. The first one, don't resign too early in games. It's really important when you are a beginner or even intermediate level like I am to not assume that the game is lost and to just give it away. Now, I know this goes in direct contradiction of another best practice when you're playing Go, or Go etiquette, which is to resign when you believe you have lost the game, because the game can go so long and you don't want to waste your opponent's time, which is absolutely fair. However, there needs to be an asterisk next to that, because most of us have a pretty underdeveloped sense of what's happening on the board if we are in, again, those beginner to intermediate levels. It's so often that I'll play a game and I will think, oh, okay, I'm losing badly at this point, or there's no way I can come back. And then I review the game with my Go teacher and we find, wait a second, there were these other things going on. You could have done this. Your opponent made a blunder. You could have come back here. And there are such frequent chances for there to be a big swing in the game when you are in the high double-digit Q range, or even when you're approaching the single-digit Q range, that you can never say it's completely lost yet. And I think that's really important. Speaking of blundering, that leads into my second point, which is don't panic when blundering. in reviewing a game again with my tutor, we were looking at a game that I had played and we were playing endgame moves, and I made a mistake where I clearly lost some points immediately. And psychologically, I said to myself, oh my goodness, like this is a big problem, and started panicking. I physically got hot, and instead of collecting myself, taking a breath, saying, okay, this is what it is. This is going to happen because you're playing so many moves in a game anyways. Nobody plays perfectly. Let me figure out what I can do to limit the damage. I then went on a string of 2 or 3 or 4 mistakes. And it shows you just how important the psychology is. If you are able to pause, take a moment after that blunder, even if it's later in the game and you don't have a lot of time, it's going to provide that chance for you to grow as a player and perhaps have comebacks and not be so thrown when you're down. And that's going to be really beneficial and I think make you enjoy the game even more. The third psychological takeaway is that when you're looking for a move on the board, play the more aggressive one. And then if it doesn't go well, you can dial it back to something that's less aggressive versus playing a move that's immediately a more defensive or safe move. A big part of enjoying this game is that you're learning, you're improving. You're not going to win every single game. And when you're not going to win every single game, you're going to lose. You need to use those losing games as learning moments. You should even use the winning games and find learning moments. But psychologically, we feel the losses more, and we can use that to our benefit to improve in the game. And so in these kinds of cases, you get to a move and you say, okay, I see the most aggressive move, I see a medium move, and then I see a more defensive move. Try the more aggressive ones, even if you don't know where it goes. And then if it blows up, right? You learn from that. You can figure out, okay, great, how do I improve this? So I think a lot of this is about how comfortable we feel in ourselves about failing and about losing and saving face or losing face. If we're playing in front of somebody else or we're playing online, we need to get over that if we really want to get into the game, we really want to improve. And some of the people with whom I've been able to speak, they were just relentless about making mistakes over and over and over in different small ways. And that gave them a huge ability to improve. And that's a really important lesson. The next set of concepts that I'm going to go through stem more from actual ways of playing the game. And so the first one that stuck with me is one that I believe I've been told will always be an important concept during the game. But the rule is to play away from strength and toward weakness. And this is referring to the groups on the board, whether they're your groups or your opponent's groups. You want to play away from strength. So in the case of your strong groups, they're already strong, whether they have directions to run on the board, whether they already have eye space to make 2 eyes. Don't play there. You're going to likely get over-concentrated and miss out on opportunities for other parts of the board. Or if you are playing near the strength of your opponent, it's going to be incredibly difficult to survive. They have so much strength. They have so many liberties in that area. It's likely not going to make sense. Of course, there are exceptions to these rules, but it's a really helpful one for me. And then play towards weakness. And this can either be, I need to play towards one of my groups because they are very weak and they need more eye space or they need more liberties. Or it can be, all of my groups are already strong and the weakest group on the board is my opponent's. I should find a way to attack it or profit from attacking it. Even though this rule is very simple on its face, it's incredibly difficult because it constantly involves making judgment calls all the time during the game. That's pretty much what makes this game hard in general, but also makes it really fun. The next one is a little bit simpler and probably for more of my level in the double-digit, single-digit queue area, which is how to capture a group. So if you decide you want to capture a group, there are a few things that you need to follow. First, it's generally the best idea to surround that group first with your stones before you try to go and do further things inside that group. What I mean by that is closer to my beginning days of playing opponents in Go, I would mostly surround the opponent, but I wouldn't have them completely surrounded. And then I would immediately start diving in to try to reduce their eye space or poke out their eyes, things like this. And then they would break out of my group. So number one, make sure you've completely surrounded that group, even if they're trying to make eye space. because even if you don't end up capturing it and they have to play extra moves to make those eyes and eye space, you can find ways to profit from that. Secondly, after you've surrounded, then you can look to reduce eye space. So it doesn't need to be poking out eyes yet. It simply needs to be placing stones around areas where they could start to make eyes. And then finally, if you've done that, actually start poking out the eyes. Play the stone at the spot that would literally not allow them to make those eyes. And one thing I had to learn over and over was that when you get to this point, if you have decided that there's a part of the board where you're going to try to capture the group or threaten to capture the group and go down this sequence of events, you need to throw out some of the normal best practices about playing, such as things like not playing empty triangles, having bad shape, or having too many stones in one part of the board. If you are now trying to threaten the capture, play wherever you really need to get it done. And that's something that I've messed up and had to relearn over and over. The last thing that I wanted to talk on was when you're doing life and death problems. There's a little bit of a sequencing of events that I've noticed when I'm doing just life and death problems, so not even playing games, which is how do I think about when I should try to be just outright living or outright killing a group versus trying to get a Seki, which is a case in which there's mutual life, both your opponent and your stones stay alive, so nobody really makes points generally, or a situation where there is a ko, which for those who don't know is a situation where you cannot repeat the same state on the board, and so you have to take turns playing somewhere else to come back to that area of the board and see if a group can be killed or saved. If you are in a life and death puzzle where you are the one trying to live, the first thing you should do is obviously try to live. If that doesn't look like it's possible and you're saying, oh my goodness, there just isn't enough eye space, I'm not going to be able to make that happen, then you can go to looking for opportunities to make Seki, because you don't necessarily need two eyes. Now you need to threaten that the opponent might get captured if they capture your group inside. If outright life or Seki is not possible, then you want to go to trying to create a ko, and you can look at what your ko threats are on the board and go from there. If you're in the opposite position and you're trying to capture a group, the first thing you should do, just like in the other situation, is you try to kill it. But if you can't kill it, then what you want to try to do is actually go to a ko. And this is going to very much depend on how much you have to gain or to lose by killing that group. You need to see how many points are at stake. And if you don't feel like that's a good situation or that's not going to be possible, then you can try to look for a Seki where at least the opponent is not getting more points than they would if they were outright alive. Now we're going to shift gears and talk with Gaza White again from the Pro Go Weiqi podcast about how time controls have been shifting at the top level of the game.
The usual historical system is the Byoyomi system, where once you run out of your main time, you get like a 30-second countdown for every move. So you have to make a move within 30 seconds. And then your next move, you have to do the same thing again. And that encouraged strategies in Korea where players would always go down to the very last second. Because even if the move was obvious, they could spend time thinking about the follow-up moves on their own time. And you're absolutely right that the Fisher increment, where you just get time added on after your move, does introduce a different strategy, because it's no longer beneficial to completely run out the clock because you don't know if you're going to need more time later on in the game.
Right.
Or it may benefit you to try and put some time in the bank. I think it's actually made the games more interesting from a watchable standpoint. I remember there was one tournament in Korea called the Go Weiqi Construction Cup, and it started, I think, 2 years ago. And the very first edition of the tournament, there was no main time, and instead players just got 10 one-minute Byoyomis. So if you needed to spend more than a minute, you just lost a Byoyomi period. Yeah, but you started off with 10. And these were like the best players in Korea that were playing in this tournament. And some strategies that I saw was from the very first move, they would spend a minute, because they didn't lose any time from spending the entire minute.
I see.
And from a spectator standpoint, it's a little bit more difficult to follow the game if the players are spending a whole minute per move
Yeah, you're just waiting 59 seconds every single time. And so you're not seeing as much for a sense of flow of the game. Is that?
Oh, absolutely.
I see.
Yes.
Interesting.
And thank goodness they changed the time controls the next year. I think they actually did Fisher increment the next year.
I see.
And it was much better. A lot of Korean tournaments have switched to Fisher increment. I do hope that actually becomes something that happens in the world majors as well. I really do like the Fisher increment. The one thing that I'm concerned about is how that's going to affect the local Australian scene, because we currently have clocks that have been donated from the Korean Baduk Association, but they're Byoyomi clocks.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, I do like that change. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I know in the American Go scene, I heard that the American Go Association, which I know is obviously, not the Korean Association or anything like that level, but I know that the American Go Association, I think, just voted to say, hey, in going forward, we're going to start to use the Fisher time control. So I'm really curious to see, hopefully, like you said, it can make for some more interesting spectating. There are a few questions that I want to leave you with. First, what recent Go lessons have you learned? Secondly, what ideas do you think we can borrow from other marketing campaigns in other areas of life to help increase the popularity of Go over here in the West? Let me know what you think, and thanks for listening.